Welcome to Everyone Loves Guitar, where we get to sit down and talk with interesting professional guitar players and related music industry experts. If you love playing guitar, stick around. You're in the right place. Hey everybody, this is Craig Garber. Today I'm going to interview Graylin Stewart. Graylin Stewart's an up-and-coming drummer who graduated from Belmont University in Nashville last year. He also studied under Jim Riley, who's the drummer for Rascal Flatts, for 5 years. Graylin's done a lot of work in his early career so far. He's performed and recorded with Dylan Schneider, Aberdeen, Riley Bria, Logan Brill, Haley Witters, Devin Dawson, Kayla Woodson, Maggie Thorne, Long Hollow Wave, Kaylee Bullard, Ann Catherine DeHart, Zach Stone, Jordan Anderson, and a lot of other country artists. So he's got a pretty good portfolio for a young up-and-coming musician. Graylin, thank you so much. I appreciate your time. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me. I've been looking forward to this for a while, man.
Well, very cool. Me too. What are you working on right now that you're most excited about?
I would say right now, the work I'm doing with Dylan Schneider, as you mentioned, he's kind of an up and coming country artist, and I've been on that for pushing a year now, a year in October, and it's been fun. It's been growing pretty rapidly. I mean, we've started playing in places like Tin Roof and stuff, and now we're doing a lot of opening acts and festival dates and that kind of thing. So probably that would be what I'm putting a lot of my time and effort into, and I'm been really enjoying it.
That's a long time to tour with somebody.
Yeah, it's gone by really fast. I mean, it all kind of formed last October, and from that point we've kind of hit the ground running, and it's, again, like I said, it's been fun to watch it grow so far.
How did you get hooked up with Dylan? Like, what was the I always say you can't connect the dots moving forward, but connecting them backwards, how did that whole thing work? What was the chain of events? Yeah,
so a buddy of mine that I went to school with had originally gotten the call to sort of do it, and a couple other guys that ended up not being able to. But he had other scheduling conflicts, had other gigs to worry about, and so he called me and asked me if I wanted to be try out and see where it went. And so I went to, I guess, our first rehearsal, and kind of been there ever since.
How do you feel like at a first rehearsal there? What's going through your mind?
I want to make sure that I've got the material prepared, because that's obviously the most important thing, is making sure that you can actually do the job and do it well. But other than that, it's just kind of like feeling out the situation in the room, feeling out the other musicians, kind of their personalities, kind of how they operate and do things, and trying to sort of find where I kind of sit in the middle of that, to where everybody is comfortable and happy and able to make the best music they can.
I think I hear that a lot. Like, the hang is very important. How do you? I give you credit as a young guy. That's a lot to process. Do you get like jitters or nerves? And if so, how do you sort of walk yourself through the process of shoving those aside and just maintaining the confidence in your drumming?
Right. I think confidence in that sort of thing all comes from preparation. That's kind of something that I try to pride myself on, is always being prepared and ready to go into a situation to where I'm not even really thinking about the music so much as I am, like trying to figure out, sort of find my place in the room, because I find it, if the music is there, then that's just one less thing you have to worry about, and then you can go on with the rest of it. So
it's, sorry, go ahead. I apologize.
You go ahead.
I was going to say, so it's safe to assume you've worked your ass off prior to going in there. So these tunes, you know them like the back of your hand.
Absolutely. Yeah, and even if it's not memorization, I'll have them charted. I'll have them to where there's no excuse for me to mess it up.
So obviously you have a really good work ethic. Where'd you get that from?
Well, I mean, I would say, part of it probably comes from my dad. He's probably one, if not one of the hardest working people I've ever known. But like, and it also just kind of comes out of necessity. Like, you're always trying to find ways to, I guess, set yourself apart from the pack. And I personally think that one of mine is, that the willingness to do the preparation and kind of the dirty work and, go through sort of the not so fun stuff of, okay, I'm going to sit here and I'm going to learn these songs back to front so that I can make the artist, as comfortable as they can be. And so through that, I guess, that's kind of where that came from, is just the willingness to do all that stuff so that I can put the best version of myself forward.
That's awesome. I read a book many years ago by a guy named Joaquin de Posada, and I actually saw him speak, and his whole thing was successful people are successful because they're willing to do the things other people aren't, which sort of sounds exactly like what you're talking about. You mentioned your dad. What does your dad do?
He works at the home offices for Cracker Barrel out here in Lebanon, Tennessee.
Awesome. That's good.
Yeah.
What does he do there?
I believe he's a project manager.
That's very cool, man.
Yeah, so working with like finances and money and all that stuff. He could obviously give you a way better explanation than I can, but yeah, he's
totally
been
cool.
there my whole life, and he's, again, like any sort of job to do, whether it's that or like work around the house, like manual labor, like he's just sort of dogged in his approach to that kind of thing, and just won't quit till it's done. And so that's, I guess, sort of rubbed off on me.
That's great,
in a few ways.
That's great. Nice to have that inspiration. Does your mom work as well? Was she?
Yeah, she is a research nurse at Vanderbilt University.
Oh,
Medical
awesome!
Center.
That's great, man. That's really good. Really nice.
Yeah.
Now,
don't even try to do what kind of stuff she does. Cause
you notice I didn't have a follow-up question for that. I'm not going near that one.
That would be insulting for me to try and even elaborate on it.
No, man, it's all good. You're from Tennessee. Where in Tennessee are you from?
I grew up in a town called Hendersonville, about 25 minutes north of Nashville.
That's funny. There's a Hendersonville, like 25 minutes north of Asheville in North Carolina.
Really?
Yeah. Well, my wife and I went to Asheville, and like a year or two ago, and we took a little visit up to Hendersonville, and it was like, I don't know if your Hendersonville is like this, but it was like stepping back in time to the 1950s. It was really,
oh man,
it was the kind of town you walk across the street and the cars stop. Like, you're jaywalking basically, but the cars will stop. Now, I'm from New York City, so that was a real.
Oh, that's
that was I was like flushed with kindness and love that a car would stop and let me cross the middle of the street. I've been living in Florida for a long time, but that it was really nice. I was wonderful people. Everybody was nice. Is your town? What is Hendersonville in Tennessee like?
It's not quite that, I guess, polite. But no, it's kind of your typical suburban town. I guess kind of mid-sized, and I really enjoyed here. It was a great place to grow up. Really, polite people everywhere you go, safe community. Like, I've got no complaint. A lot of people like my age are like, it's boring. There's nothing to do here. But like for me, like, I really enjoyed it. It's the kind of the perfect place for me.
Well, I think Nashville in general. I was in Nashville about maybe last October, November, probably around when you started gigging for Dylan. And I found Nashville to be literally the nicest the nicest people I had ever encountered in my life. Y'all come back and see us kind of thing. Everybody was like really genuine about that, and they were just kind, and It was just a nice place, man. Everybody was very welcoming, and even though, look, I'm only encountering most of the people in commercial situations, and on the one hand, you could say, well, they want you to come back, but I could tell you right now, it's not like that in Florida. Everybody's like kind of annoyed that you came in to bother them, and they have to work. So it was very, I really appreciated the whole sentiment of the town in general.
Yeah, and I'm fairly confident saying that, like, had you kind of gone off the commercial path and kind of just talked to locals and people that are kind of been there for a while, I feel confident saying you would have encountered the same thing. I mean, it's kind of, again, it's like people always say, it's like a small, big city. Like, it's very communal.
Yep.
People kind of have each other's backs. It's the greatest city in the world, in my opinion. I love it.
That's cool. Well, I haven't talked to a musician I haven't had that out of Nashville that I haven't enjoyed speaking to. Everybody's been so welcoming, so I have no reason to doubt whatever you're saying is not true. I'm sure it's 100% accurate. Any brothers or sisters?
Yeah, I have two older sisters, Amy and Alyssa.
Shout out to Amy and Alyssa.
Shout out, yeah. What's up? Yeah, they're, how old are they? I don't know. I think like 27 or 28 and 26, I believe.
So are you like really comfortable talking to girls growing up? Because all my buddies that had sisters were like really smooth with women.
I mean, I don't know if I would go that far, but I mean, I've never really, nothing about, oh man, this is going to sound pretentious.
No, say it. It is what it is, man.
I mean, like, I've grown up with girls, so all the things that people like, oh, I don't get this. I'm like, oh, well, I've kind of grown up seeing how, they operate. And so would think I'm a little, I don't know, I guess we'll say more understanding than some people, I guess.
That's cool. Understanding is good. That's how women love that. Understanding, empathy.
Yeah.
That's what gets you. I've been married 25 years, and when I'm putting away the dishes and doing stuff like that, my wife looks at me like
little stuff that goes a long way.
Yeah. That's the little things. That's cool, man. When did you start drumming?
So I started actually playing and taking lessons when I was 10. My dad was in the school band growing up, and so he always had, I guess, his pair of sticks from that time kind of laying around the house. And I had always kind of, from a younger age than 10, just sort of enjoyed messing around and, beating stuff with them. And then around 10, I started to really kind of take an interest in music, and the drums specifically. And so I started taking lessons at that point. Got my first drum set and kind of went from there, and then went through school and started taking lessons and doing all that and played everywhere I could. And so, yeah, that's kind of my beginning point.
When did you know? Well, two things I'll say. One is I looked at some of your videos on your YouTube channel.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know you from anywhere, but I will say when you play, you are like laser focused, or you're doing a good job pretending that, which is really awesome. Yeah,
I look a lot more serious than I am. I've tried to sort of work on that, but it's just, I guess it is just the way that I am. I like you said, I look kind of almost angry at some points, and I'm actually having a great time. That's just kind of my natural resting point when playing.
That's interesting. I've interviewed musicians in all, guitar, bass, and drums, and that's a pretty common thing that a lot of guys say, man, I always look like I'm angry when I'm playing. And they're like real laid-back, mellow guys like you. They're like the furthest thing from angry. But I don't look at it like they're angry. I look at it as intensity. And as a guy listening,
mm-hmm.
That's the guy I want to listen to. That guy that's so freaking intense. That's focus. To me, that translates into like commitment and desire.
Mm-hmm.
So I look at that as a good thing. I don't care what someone's looking like. I want to hear what's going on, what's coming out, and that's what makes me happy as a listener. So you started playing at 10. At what point in time did you know this is what I want to do?
I would say probably when I was about 15 or 16.
Oh, wow.
At that point, I'd been taking lessons with Jim Riley for a little while.
That was probably a good experience, no?
Oh, the best experience. We could do a whole other podcast on that.
Yeah, I bet.
But he, we were going over some kind of stuff, some sort of Nashville geared stuff. Like we were working on. He has a book about the Nashville number system, so we were playing some stuff out of that. And he kind of, said some things to me, like sort of saying like, "Hey, like I could really see you like kind of being a musician, and actually, working in that kind of thing." I mean, and don't get me wrong, I was no prodigy or anything, but I guess he kind of saw like the raw like
potential.
Yeah, the raw potential, I guess, was kind of there, and so that kind of, made me kind of step back and be like, okay, like maybe there's something here. Maybe I could try and play drums, because I mean that's kind of that's all I really wanted and want to do, and so from that point on, I kind of started taking things a little bit more seriously, and really started trying to sort of hone my craft for whatever the future may hold.
Well, I give you credit, because when a guy like that says, "Hey, you've got something here," for you to respond at 15 or 16 and be smart enough to say, "Man, I need to listen to this." If this, it's not like some, elementary school music teacher is telling you this. You got a well-respected professional. I mean, it's got time to listen, man. That's good.
Yeah, I mean, and again, like he's had probably the biggest impact out of anybody on who I am, kind of as a player. And so it's that definitely kind of meant a lot coming from him. And then, because for a long time it was like, oh, like, he plays for Rascal Flatts and like has this, cool job. And that was the point when it was like, oh, like that could maybe be me someday. That'd be kind of cool,
Yeah, yeah.
So,
well, I mean, being a musician, like, is probably the coolest thing next to maybe, or it's not next to, but it's like someone said, "Hey, you should be an actor. I think I could see you doing that."
Right.
It's really a cool thing, especially as a kid,
Yeah.
You mentioned the Nashville number system. I've never heard of that. What is that?
So the Nashville number system is kind of the way that music is communicated out here. It began in the studios as a way of quickly notating and writing charts for studio sessions. So, for instance, like if you're in like the key of C, every chord is given a number. So like C would be 1, D would be 2, and so on. Sure. And so forth. And so that way you can give every chord a number and you write it down, and you don't have to worry about keys so much, because like on a normal sheet music, if they say, oh, we want to take it up from F to G, you've got to write a whole new chart, a whole new everything. Whereas with that, the key doesn't matter. So you can just say, okay, we're in G, and it's just a really quick way to sort of communicate music. And it's something that, especially in school, because I mean, in school you'd find yourself in a lot of different situations and playing with different people and having to kind of constantly absorb new material. And that was a great way for me to sort of stay on top of all that and be able to sort of deliver in that way. Because the other thing is, like, you want to know kind of what's going on musically. Like, you don't want to just be like, oh, I'm going to sit back here on the drums and sort of, worry about that. Like, you want to be aware of what's going on with everybody. And so that is a good way to do that.
It's interesting. I never knew it was eye-opening to me. I never knew that drummers had to be that involved until I was interviewing, I think it might have been Kyle May even. And he first mentioned it to me. He said, well, what do you mean you charted out the music? I was totally unaware. I thought drummers just go in and drum. Yeah,
I mean, and I guess some people have the ability to do that. But for me, like, it's especially, I mean, for like rehearsal purposes or something, like you want to be able to say, oh, on the bridge on that 6-5-4 progression. Like, you don't want to be like, in the bridge, that part when the when the chords go down. Yeah, that like.
Yeah, when the chords are da da.
Right.
Yeah. There's no standardized way of communicating with anybody by doing that.
Right, but I mean, with this thing, I can sort of do that and sound like I know what I'm talking about.
No, that's totally cool. Which you do, man. You obviously do. So let me ask you this. Somewhat of a difficult question. You're at the early stages in your career now, and I'm assuming with the work ethic you have and the discipline you have and the perseverance that you've shown, that you're hustling and doing whatever you can to get your name out there.
Right.
So, and I'm sure that you have, like anybody else running a business, and I've been an entrepreneur for 20 years almost, it's the same thing in any business. You got good days and bad days.
Mm-hmm.
On the good days, it's great. On the bad days, it's frustrating, right? It's obviously paying off because you're starting to play for artists that are well-known and really starting to make a name for themselves in their career. So I guess I have two questions. The first one is, what actual steps do you take to create activity and, create some sort of a buzz about you so that people, when they're thinking of drummers that are available, they think, oh, Graylin Stewart, yeah, let's call him, give him a shot. And the second question is, for someone starting out who's not as far along as you are and who hasn't had the opportunity to do the things that you've done, what advice would you give them what to do and maybe sometimes more important, what not to do?
All right. So to answer the question kind of about how I do that kind of thing for myself, I believe there's some value to going out and kind of pushing the pavement, like you hear people talking about, and going out to clubs and venues and shows and that kind of thing, and just sort of being seen. But I am a big believer in kind of letting my work speak first, because to me, I've always kind of struggled with the idea of like, oh, I'm going to go and network and do all these things, but these people have never heard me play.
Mm-hmm.
So I tend to not really do all that much of that kind of thing unless I'm at a show that I've played at.
Right.
Simply because, I mean, it's not like an ego thing. Simply because I want them to see that, okay, he can actually, get the job done and perform well, and then go and sort of do all the other things. So my network has kind of grown just sort of gig to gig with people that I play with. I like to come in and do a good job, and then sort of and then kind of go from there, and that approach is kind of it's been working for me. I mean, most gigs that I've gotten have kind of come from other gigs that I've done in the past, and so that's kind of how I have chosen to approach that so far. And again, it's been kind of working out for me. So
I credit you, because one thing you said, and as a young guy, you don't realize how respected, how much, at least for someone like me, you don't want to be superficial and network for the purpose of networking. And I think there's a real respectable authenticity in that gets recognized. So congratulations. Absolutely. And that's not always easy, because I think, and again, it's no different in a business. I have met people over the years that thrive on, being somewhere just to be seen. Mm-hmm. And me personally, I vomit. I would never do that. It's just not my deal, because then you go there with a purpose of making relationships, but it's not making relationships. It's making relationships to get something. And I don't know, a lot of people find there's nothing wrong with that. That doesn't sit well with me. I find it a little disingenuous, and it sounds like you do as well. So long term, you get a lot more respect doing it the way you're doing. At least that's what I've found. And if nothing else, you look in the mirror, you respect yourself a lot more, and that's really what counts more than anything. So, big ups to you, man.
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely I've tried to do that kind of thing, and I just don't know how to try and be somebody's friend, but not actually really want to be there.
Right. It's like a really awkward thing. It's right. Right. It's like picking a woman up in a bar for one reason only, and like throughout the whole process, it's one reason only, and like when you leave, you just feel like, ugh, I need to shower and like, because
exactly.
I just feel filthy now, emotionally filthy. Yeah, I totally get that, man.
Exactly.
Yeah, I totally get it.
And then the second part of that question, I'm kind of obviously like still kind of learning, still kind of going through things. And my biggest advice to somebody that's kind of doing the same thing is to this might kind of sound like an oversimplification, but it's kind of what I've sort of ran by. It's just like, do good work and be nice, and things will have a way of working out for you. Because again, like people get, I think, just so caught up in the idea of networking and that whole thing, but it all really boils down, in my opinion, to those two things. And if you can, do the job, at a high level, and if you're nice to people and, people enjoy being around you, then there's going to be a spot for you, in my opinion.
I think that's wisdom beyond your years, man. My older son was just asking me a couple of months ago something about he was having a stressful time or something, and I just said, Nick, just be nice. Mm-hmm. Everything will work out. Just be nice. And I interviewed. Do you know who Walter Carter is from Carter Vintage?
I'm aware of Carter Vintage. I'm not familiar with Walter Carter.
So I interviewed him. He's the owner there, him and his wife. And I said, he's an older guy, and I always try to get some wisdom from people older and smarter than me. And I said, what words of wisdom? You've done a lot and accomplished a lot. What do you want to leave with for words of wisdom for people to abide by? And he said, man, I just going to say, do the same thing I tell my staff since we opened the door. Just be nice. So, yeah, I don't think it's an oversimplification. I think it's it's a nice, easy, relaxing way to live your life and get a lot of shit done.
Yeah. I think I would agree.
So, question, let's talk about drums for a minute.
Okay.
Do drummers have a thing with like vintage and modern what like guitarists do, or does that not exist in the drum world?
I mean, there is definitely sort of a demand for vintage stuff, but I don't think there's like a divide there. I think at least everyone that I know, I mean, it's all good,
Yeah.
And if you can get, that 66 Ludwig kit, awesome, but like you don't feel like, the new kit that you have now is less than that. It's all just kind of it's a different sound, and if you're trying to get that, then that's one thing. But I don't think there's like a big like vintage versus non-vintage debate that goes on as much as maybe guitar players do.
Yeah, so it sounds like the manic, insatiable addiction for new gear isn't as prevalent in the drum world, in the percussion world.
That obviously goes from person to person. I mean, if I had extra money laying around, I would love to blow it all on maybe some older gear, some new gear, but I've never known it to be as much of a sort of insatiable need amongst drummers.
Interesting. Hey, who were some of your early drum influences?
Oh man, I would say my first sort of drumming hero would probably be Alex Van Halen.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, he's a monster.
Oh, he's the best, man. He's such an interesting player to me. But yeah, I was kind of raised on, my dad kind of raised me on classic rock and things from that era. So those were sort of my first big, a lot of my first big like sort of influences from that era. But I would say Alex Van Halen was the first. And then, you know, kind of going on, I got into like, I mean, bands like Fall Out Boy and kind of things that were bigger at that point in time. So like Andy Hurley from Fall Out Boy was an early influence. Mm-hmm. And then kind of as I started getting older and I got more into like country music, guys like Chris McHugh were a big influence on my playing as far as sort of, you know, figuring out an approach of a way to approach sort of country music, like contemporary country music. I've always really enjoyed his playing.
Right.
Just a real sort of like solid play what needs to be played and nothing else type thing. And then these days I love guys like Aaron Sterling, mm-hmm. who he's based out of LA, but he kind of goes back and forth and does the LA and Nashville thing. He's played for everybody.
Guy. He's a studio guy.
Studio guy. He is, but he recorded John Mayer's Born and Raised in Paradise Valley albums and then toured those.
Gotcha.
But for the most part, he pretty much is strictly a studio guy. And then, I mean, most recently I've been digging Ronnie Van Zant from The Killers a lot.
Okay.
So, I mean, yeah, it's all kind of all over the place, and I could probably name 100 more people, but those are sort of my yesterday's and today's influences, I guess.
Yeah, it's a really healthy mix of across the board, genre-wise. That's really good.
Yeah, I mean, I spend most of my time, you know, kind of playing country, which I love and I enjoy, but I also I find myself more and more, I very rarely recreationally listen to country. I kind of find myself going more in those other kind of avenues that we were talking about.
Sure.
I don't know, just to sort of, you know, mix it up and sort of get different ideas and perspectives and that kind of thing.
Hey, you're early in your career, so you may not be able to answer this, but do you see yourself, you know, 3 to 5 years from now, or maybe even longer term if you have some kind of a vision like that, do you see yourself as a touring musician, or do you want to get more into studio work yourself?
The ultimate, I guess, sort of goal or fantasy would to do sort of be sort of a live drummer now and probably for the next, you know, however long. I'm not, I guess, going to put a cap on that, but and then as I get older, I would like to sort of graduate or move into the studio scene a little bit. Although these days, I mean, those lines seem to be getting sort of blurred more and more. You see more guys that are on the road sort of doing sessions, you know, whether it be playing on big records or doing sort of remote sessions from their house. Like these days, it seems like there's kind of room for both of it.
Yeah.
If you allow it.
Yeah, especially the way music's becoming so portable, for sure.
Right.
You mentioned that you seem to be playing mostly country, but you recreationally enjoy other kinds of music. What was it about country initially that made you gravitate towards it over other genres to play it professionally?
Well, initially, I mean, it was pretty simple initially. It was the fact that I could hear, you know, real instruments being used, which sounds, I guess, kind of weird, but like at that point, everywhere else on the radio, like pop music, like there isn't a ton of actual drums being played.
Right.
And so I was like, kind of like, oh, like I can actually, you know, play like the actual drums and do it that way. And then from there, I kind of graduated and moved into, you know, like, oh, like I got really into, I guess, the storytelling aspect of country music, and I got really sort of enamored with that. And and so I started, I guess, sort of look at it in a different way the deeper I got into it. But it really just started. I was like, hey, I play drums, and those sound like drums to me, so I want to do that.
Yeah, that makes sense for sure. I'm assuming too, growing up, 25 minutes outside of Nashville was a massive influence in you in general. No,
actually, I had sort of a phase when I was younger, maybe like 10 or 12, where I really liked country music, and then that phase kind of ended, and I didn't really pick it up again until I was probably 16 or 17, to be honest. And I don't really know why that is, to be honest, but I got really into like rock and like metal and that type of thing, and that was
that is interesting.
Yeah, it doesn't make too much sense, but that's kind of what got me through like high school and stuff. Kind of what I was into then, and then once I kind of got to college and was sort of thrown into Nashville a little bit, I kind of, I guess, rediscovered the genre and had kind of stuck with it since then. So,
do you ever get behind your drum kit and like just throw on some Metallica or something wild like that, or something really loud and raunchy?
Every once in a while, I kind of found I could play that stuff a lot better when I was 15 than I can now.
Oh, that's interesting. Why is
for
that?
Whatever reason. Well, to play that kind of stuff, like things with like a lot of double bass,
right,
and all that kind of thing. It's a skill set that kind of has to be cultivated.
Oh, okay.
And I have not cultivated that skill set in quite some time. That's
interesting. Yeah, thank you.
So every once in a while I'll give it a shot, but then I'm like, oh man, like I need to practice,
Yeah, well, yeah, man, I hear that. Hey, do you have any hobbies or interests outside of music?
I would say the biggest one. I am a massive A, hockey, and then B, Nashville Predators fan. And so that's kind of I've been a huge hockey fan since I was like 5, and so that's kind of something that I've always enjoyed, sort of spending my time watching and playing for a period, and I enjoy that. I like movies a lot. Just kind of hanging out and hanging out with friends and all that kind of stuff. I'm not too crazy. I'm a pretty simple dude, I think.
There's not a lot of musicians that are into sports, so I'd imagine when you find somebody on the road that is also into it, you guys must like connect very quickly.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, it's almost like being from another country, and then you come to America and you feel alone. Then you meet somebody from your country. It's like, whoa, let's hook up, let's hang out.
Yeah, it's always kind of a good lightning rod for a friendship or relationship or something. It's a quick bond.
Yeah, for sure, man. I had a question here. Who's been the biggest influence on your life? But it sounds like your dad's been the biggest influence on you personally, and your drum teacher Ramsey, Jim Riley. Sorry about that. Yeah.
I think those would both be very fair statements. I've been pretty blessed to have those two men as sort of role models in my life and people to look up to. And so, yeah, I've learned so much from both of them.
That's awesome, man. I'm happy that you've had them both. Before we go, I want to ask you one question. If you can think of anything, can you tell me a bizarre or ridiculous road story from touring? And you do not need to name any names.
Oh man.
And if it's nothing if you haven't seen anything too nutty, that's fair enough too. You don't need to make anything up or stress out.
Oh man, I'm trying to think. Naturally, I'm drawing a blank when I need to not do that.
Man, no worries. No worries at all.
It'll come to me at like midnight tonight, I'm sure.
No worries. One quick question. Anything you're trying to improve on now, whether it's musically, personally, business, or anything else?
I guess musically I've gotten really into sort of hip hop type grooves, things that you would find like I really enjoy like Timbaland's production on Jay-Z stuff or Justin Timberlake stuff. So something I kind of enjoy doing when I have the time to is I'll like write out those grooves like from those songs and then go and like figure out how to play them, because those Timbaland specifically has just some really, really interesting grooves, a lot of interesting like relationships between the hi-hat and the kick drum that are very challenging to play. So that's kind of I do that kind of as a fun exercise, and then also just sort of improvisation in general. That's always kind of a constant sort of battle to get better at. So those would probably be the two top things that I kind of work on right now. But I mean, it's ever changing and ever growing. So
very cool, man. That contributes to your work ethic too, because you're doing it for fun, but it's your craft, man. You're working at it. That's awesome.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's again like it is fun, but it still has sort of a value to playing, because I see a lot of guys, especially in LA, that play that type of stuff, and I'm always like, man, like I wish I could play like that, and I find that's a good way to sort of at least begin sort of getting to that sort of level, I guess.
Yeah, it's playing above your head. That's the only way you get better, no matter what level you're at. That.
Exactly.
Hey, man, I really cannot thank you enough for your time. It's really been a pleasure interviewing. You're a super, professional and genuinely nice young up-and-coming player, and I wish nothing but the best for you. Is there anything you'd like to promote or anything else you're working on now, or how can people find you online?
Online, I'm on Instagram and Twitter, just at Graylin Stewart. Come say what's up, shoot me a line. Other than that, I'd say that's about it. Yeah, just thank you very much for having me. I've very much enjoyed this.
Awesome, man. And what I'd like to do is have you back in a couple of years, because I'd like to see where you've gone from today to that point, if you're open to it.
Absolutely.
That would be awesome. It would be my pleasure. Hey, everybody, Check out Graylin Stewart on Instagram and Twitter, and he spells his name Graylin, Graylin, Stewart, Stewart. He's on Instagram and Twitter, and he's on YouTube, too. You got to search him out, but he's got some pretty cool stuff there. Hey, thanks very much for listening. You can sign up to get notified of future episodes on our website at everyonelovesguitar.com. Now go play your guitar and have fun. Till next time, I'm out. Peace. We hope you enjoyed this show. If you did, subscribe to the Everyone Loves Guitar podcast, and you can do this online at everyonelovesguitar.com or on iTunes. And if you like the show, please leave us a 5-star positive review. The more 5-star reviews we get, the higher our show ranks, and higher rankings mean we get to continue speaking with cool, interesting guests on our show. We'll see you on the next episode, and until then, keep playing your guitar and have fun making music.